Just before we begin, I'm just going to start with a Bible reading. It's found in Hebrews chapter 12, and it's verse 1 and 2. And the Bible reading says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin that clings to us so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God." So first of all, thank you very much for having me here today to share with you what the Lord has done in my life. I know a lot of faces, I can see a lot of faces I know there, but I'm going to introduce myself anyway. So my name is Julie, I live locally here in Annaghmore. I'm the oldest of a family of 5 children, and we're all very close in age. Any of you know they're like a wee row of ducks. Up until about the age of 8 years old, we lived in a small 3-bedroom house in Armagh. So 5 young children split between 2 bedrooms was a wee bit chaotic. So later, when I was about 8 years old, we moved out here to Annaghmore, into the house that we now live in and where we've grew up. When we moved out here, immediately we were surrounded by very good neighbours, Christian people who love God, and that was evident through our childhood, and you'll hear a little bit more about that. We absolutely, as children, loved living in the country, literally spent morning to night in the fields. During the summertime, we would have picked gooseberries and apples and things for the local farmers. I think I was one of the only girls that went back to school with welly boot mark lines on my legs from being outside all summer. It was great. We just loved, town life wasn't for us, country life was for us. And it wasn't very long before our neighbours asked my mummy would we all come along to a children's meeting that was run by their church in Derrylee meeting. And again, a lot of people here would have went to a Derrylee meeting. There's a wee bus on a Thursday night and we all jumped on. And I just loved it. I really loved it. The meeting at Derrylee, we learnt about Bible stories and things, you know, things that I had. Mummy had always sent us to Sunday school, but I never really took much in, and it wasn't until this wee children's meeting that I learnt more about Jesus and more about the cross and all the stories from the Old and New Testament. And it was probably at a young age, I can't remember exactly, but I do remember at one of those meetings I asked one of the leaders that I wanted to become a Christian. And Jesus then came into my life, and that was at a really young age, which was great. The seed was planted early. So then at secondary school I led quite a quiet life, just sort of blended in with the crowd. Still didn't really grow up, came home from secondary school and jumped straight into welly boots on the way up the fields. Things didn't really change. I was quite sort of immature, I suppose, at that age, but in a good way. And I remember at secondary school I went along to Scripture Union weekends, and the weekend was brilliant. I remember hearing what it truly meant to lead a Christian life. You know, you learn as a child how important it is to ask the Lord into your heart, but it's different leading a Christian life. You know, you have to sort of hear about that too, and that's when I first heard what it actually meant to be a Christian. And I remember coming home from the Scripture Union weekend, and I remember so exciting, and I was telling Mummy, do you know what a Christian is? Do you know what it means to be a Christian? And I explained the whole thing to her. And even at that time, God was starting to work in our family, because at that 2003, my mummy then became a Christian after I told her about the Scripture Union weekends. So unfortunately with school, the seed never really grew much more there for me. I was supposed what you would call good living more than a Christian. I didn't do anything wrong, but I didn't do much good either. I would have been the type of person who wouldn't have said a bad word. I wouldn't, even in my later years at secondary school, I never went out or never drank with all the rest. I think maybe because I was from the country, it was harder for me to get into the town and stuff, and I never partook in that. Even I had a lot of friends who run about, and they would have said to me, "Oh, say a bad word," and I would have said, "No, I'm not doing that, that's not me." So it was good living, but I wasn't really doing much more than that. And somewhere in between finishing secondary school and starting university, some things in my life just started to change, and began to run about with different people and new friends. And, the thoughts of that scripture union weekend and what it meant to be a Christian started to drift very far from my mind. I would have read my Bible up until this point, but I started to read my Bible less and less, and I wouldn't really have prayed that much. And, I always say the little things in life are the biggest, and little things, it might seem like reading and praying is so little, but it's so big with God, maintaining a relationship with Him. So from here on in, as I say, I just started to drift away. And I remember getting asked by my friends, would you want to come to a night out? And that was okay. I went along. I even remember saying to Mummy, what do you even wear on a night out? And away I went. And at the start I says, I'll just go on this night out, but I'll not drink any alcohol. I'll be the sensible one, and it'll be great. God will give me, maybe God would have given me a chance to talk to unsaved people or something like that. But as I said, God was far from my mind anyway. And I started to go, and I had a few friends who were Christians as well, and they were going through the same thing. They had become Christians, but they wanted to go out and go to nightclubs. And I thought, well, if they go, maybe I could go too. And I could have stuck with other friends. I was still invited out to different meetings and things, and I could have went along with them, but my heart's desires was going to the nightclubs, and this is the lifestyle I had chose myself. I don't blame anyone or anything. It was all me. And whenever I started to backslide away from God, it didn't happen overnight. I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm not being a Christian anymore. It started very slowly. And as I say, just started off with wee things like reading less and praying less, and then going to the nightclub and not drinking, and going and taking one drink, and so on and so forth. The devil sort of tricks you to think that you've got control over everything, but the only person who has control in that situation is the devil. Each night I went out, I got pushed further and further away from God, until the point where my identity wasn't the same person. I wasn't the girl who was quiet and didn't curse and didn't swear. I was the girl who, did you see Julie in the Banville or whatever at the weekend? That was my identity, and that was how the path I had chosen. And your sin will always take you further than you wanted to go. You think you've got control, but you don't. As I say, you start off slowly and eventually. But anyway, when I went to university in Coleraine, I was like a little fish in a big pond, and I fell in with a crowd of people who really loved to party and go out. And we would have all went out together maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Kelly's nightclub, the Anchor, the Porch Church. And most nights, to my shame, would have had that much drink before you even went to the nightclub. You didn't even remember what happened while you were there or who you seen. It was all the next day. Do you not remember such and such? And unfortunately, most nights I didn't really remember that much. It was only through God's grace that probably I kept safe. There was 1 or 2 nights where I have friends whose drinks were spiked, and anything could have happened, but thankfully God had His hand on me. Even in the nightclubs, God followed me right in there, and He had His hand on me. I was going away from Him, but He wasn't going away from me. And many of my Christian friends that I used to hang about with could see a big change in my life. They'd invite me to different things, and I just would make excuses. During the week, I'd went out 3 times. I didn't want to go out at the weekend or do anything. All I wanted to do was work, get some more money, and sleep. And I just avoided all my Christian friends, just like, the plague. They text me, I wouldn't reply, things like that. And as I say, I just worked at the weekends for more money to go out during the week. And when university ended, the summer came, and summer came for me. Of course, I wanted to go out then at the weekends, and we started to go out places around home, Banbridge, Cookstown, Oma, Belfast, and there was a bit of a crowd, a group of us, and because I was one of the older ones, I was sort of mostly left in charge of organising the next weekend. Julie, get the bus sorted, where we're going, whatever, and all that potential, that God had given to me, that as a school, the person who wouldn't say a bad word, the devil was using up all my potential for his own good, for bringing other people out with me. And it makes me realise that if you're not living for God, you are living for the devil, and you're working for him, and he can spot a potential in you as well. And just a wee verse in 1 Peter 5 verse 8, be sober, be watchful, because your adversary the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. The devil's always looking for his prey, but we have to be on guard. And when God's on your side, you don't have any other fears. So I carried on through university, By this stage, God was way out of my mind. I didn't even think about it. I wouldn't have said one bit anything. I would never have said I never went to church at this stage. I would never have even admitted at one time I was ever a Christian. My life was away from God's hands. And it got to the point where I wouldn't have dreamt of going on a night out without being completely drunk, and that was just it for me. And the girl who'd come from school had gone. So for 4 years this went on from I was about age 18 to 22. And my mummy would have been praying for me flat out, and she didn't ever tell me, you know, she never stopped me from going, because, as you know, with teenagers, and you don't tell someone not to do something, to do it 10 times worse. But she prayed every night, and I would have had to come home and pretend I hadn't taken any drink, even though she would have heard me being sick. And towards the end of the 4 years, when I was about 22, my family went through a really, really tough time. Within 9 months, 4 people really close to our family all died, and quite suddenly. And it was really hard, especially for my mum. Her brother, he died in a farm accident. Just one day went to his work, and unfortunately he didn't come back home. And her dad then 4 months later passed away. Her best friend 2 months after that, and her brother-in-law in the August after that again. So within 9 months, God had taken 4 people out of our life, and you know, just like that, their lives were gone in a flash. And there's a saying, you get up in the morning, you put your own shoes on, but you don't know who's going to take them off at night. And that was really proof in our house during that time. And there was a wee change started happening in my life. At this stage, I was living over in England because of my job. There was no work at home. I work as an optician, so I went straight to England from university. And in England, I have no Christianity at all. There's no such thing. But something began to change in my life, and that was God starting to stir in my heart again. And I didn't even know it at that time. All I just knew was, I don't want to be in England anymore. I want to be back home. And I wanted home so much, and I started looking for jobs and applying. And even though jobs weren't advertised, I'd have emails, do you have a job? And eventually nothing ever came back. So eventually I just says, Mummy, I'm coming home, I don't care. Mummy says, don't you worry, I work up in Wolsey's shop, you'll be fine. And anyway, so I came back home, and you know, within even a week or so, I had loads of work. I was able to work in opticians all over the country. So there was God working again and providing a way for me. And when I came home, I still wanted to go out, you know, because that was, again, my life. That was my identity at this stage. But there wasn't the same buzz out of going out anymore and going to nightclubs. The buzz had gone completely from it. And just reminds me of a wee verse which says in Hebrews 11, the pleasures of sin are only for a season. And praise the Lord, that was my season about to finish. I wasn't going to be getting these pleasures. And I remember I spoke to one of my good Christian friends here tonight, and I said, you know, she had gone through the same sort of course, being a Christian backslid, and she'd come back to God. And I remember asking her, you know, what about this? I'm not getting any crack out of this anymore. What do you think? And she's explained to me about conviction and how God, He changes your heart. You don't change, He changes you. And that's what conviction was. So I didn't really even know what conviction was until then, until I sort of felt it. And for 6 months or so, from about March, I really battled with this conviction. You know, I knew in my heart that God wanted me to change, and He wanted me to come back to Him, and He wanted me to give my life to Him, but I just wasn't ready to let go of all the things that, you know, meant so much to me. You know, I thought I would lose all my friends, and I thought I wouldn't have anything to do at weekends. I would ask for forgiveness one day, and that weekend I'd be planning the night out. You know, it was just such a battle, one foot here and one foot there. And I remember, like, my friends would have asked me along to, like, a meeting on a Friday night, and I would have went to a Christian meeting. But then on the way home from it, I would have called in the Bennetts, you know, that way. It really was just literal living 2 lives. And I was keeping one foot always on the world, and just my life, I didn't know what I was doing with it anymore. And I remember my friend, I told her about that, and I said, you know, about going to Bennetts and things, and she says to me, you know, Julie, do you think that Jesus is just a joke? And, you know, that really hit home for me. Like, you know, I felt so ashamed that I was making a complete mockery out of Christian faith. I was making a mockery out of, you know, everything that I grew up believing, the truth of the Bible. I was just making a mockery out of it all. I felt so ashamed of myself. And it made me realise that it's completely impossible to ever try to please God and please man at the same time, because you can't live your life with one foot in the world and you can't live your life with one foot in heaven. You have to give God everything, and I finally realised that. And just when I was thinking, yes, this is it, there was the devil again chipping away at my shoulder, and I felt so ashamed. I says, I could never be a Christian. I've tried all this. I've tried to be good, and I says to myself, I'll try to be good, and then when I'm good enough, I'll become a Christian. And just the devil had almost convinced me just to give up on the whole thing. And just when I was right out at the very edge, there was Jesus, and he was holding his hands out for me to come back in. And I was just about to give up, but God wasn't going to give up. He doesn't change. He never changes. He never gives up on any of us. And at this time, sorry, just take a wee drink. So at this time then, I was invited along to a youth rally. And Alan Bartley was speaking at it. And Alan, I don't exactly remember what his service was about. But I do remember the main verse that it was based around was Romans chapter 5, verse 8. And it said, But God shows his love towards us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And it was just like that for me. I suddenly realised, God loved me before I was good. God loved me while I was still a sinner. God loved me while I was letting him down every day. He still loved me, and he died on the cross for me. And just like the people who nailed Jesus to the cross and threw his clothes away, spat on and put thorns in his head, he still loved every one of them, and he still loved me. And that just literally was like 10 ton being lifted off my shoulder. And that night, in the 20th of October 2013, I just gave my whole life over to Jesus. And, God's timing was so perfect, completely. My life changed, no joke, overnight. It was amazing. Within 1 month after being saved, my next brother, Robert, he got saved, and that was completely out of the blue, and the both of us went to a mission trip in Poland the following February, and I wouldn't have went if he wasn't going, he wouldn't have went if I wasn't going. Two of us had to drag each other there. But God had this all planned out. The only thing that I lost when I became a Christian was that fear, that fear in your life that things aren't going to work out just disappeared, and everything else was a gain. Again, new friends that had similar interests, but I kept all my old friends. People worry about when you become a Christian, what about my friends? What if I lose all my friends? But I can see my friends here now who I've been friends with. The people who you lose are not your friends. They don't love you, and they don't care for you if they're willing to forget about you the minute you become a Christian. And since becoming a Christian, that's nearly 4 years now, God's just blessed my life in so many ways. He's given me wonderful opportunities, and I've realised the happiest places to serve him, and going to different mission trips. I've been out to Poland now 5 times. I've been to Kenya. I'm back at university. And just, God has blessed my life, even my own family. One by one, the rest of my family got saved within a very short space of time. Told you we're like a wee row of ducks. Even at this very mission 3 years ago, in the same night, my sister, my dad, and one of my good friends there, Adam, all got saved in the one night. God can work in anyone's life, and he was certainly working. He's so good. I let him down all the time, but God never fails. I was completely broken, changed person, but here I am, a new creation. It's no longer me, but it's Jesus living in me. And Christian life's brilliant, but it's not easy. We're still living in the world, and you still have daily struggles, and that's maybe jobs, money, even relationships, illness. It still comes to us all, even Christians. But imagine all those struggles without Jesus in your life. And I just can't imagine. It'd be so difficult. It's hard to get through the week, sometimes as it is. But when you've got Jesus, you've got so much. You've got hope. You can face even the most difficult times, without hope and without Jesus, knowing that he has a plan for your life. There's no hope. And you've got faith in a God who is forever faithful. He'll never fail you. And he always has a plan. Without the faith, you don't have the hope. And of course, you have love. a God who loves you despite all of your mess-ups and your imperfections. And there's not too many you could say that about in real life. You know, I can think of maybe a few people who would love me unconditionally, but God always loves me. And just I want to finish up with another wee verse in Philippians 1 verse 6. And it says, I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to the day of completion of Jesus Christ. And what a promise that is, that God someday by his power is going to fix everything that's wrong in our lives and everything that's wrong about us. But just until that day, we have to just keep pushing on and give our lives over to him. And it's not about sitting on the fence, it's about giving your whole life to Jesus. And we have a race to run, just like that first verse. It's not always going to be easy, but God makes crooked paths straight. So you have to set aside all your weights and burdens of sin and all your doubts and all your desires and all those things you don't want to lose out on. You don't want to lose this and you don't want to lose that. Forget about it. You're going to gain. Jesus never takes something from you and leaves you with less than you had before. And, you know, if there's something now holding you back, just ask yourself, is that worth, you know, giving up everything for, because that's what you're doing. Jesus is everything. If you don't give it up, you're giving your life over to him. So don't waste your life and give it over to God. Thank you.